Welcome back to another installment of Iron Rage, the show where John Romano and I rage about the latest, I guess you could say, latest terrible things, great things, amazing things, irritating things, all types of things that happen to us in society, and we try to link it to bodybuilding a little bit. And today's topic is bodybuilding movies. It all started with one, Pumping Iron. It went to two, Pumping Iron 2, the women, and it was all downhill from there as far as I'm concerned. John, let's talk about Pumping Iron for a minute because Arnold Schwarzenegger became a legend via this movie. It was the vehicle which promoted him to the general population. It revealed his personality. It revealed what bodybuilding was, the culture, the subculture, what we had to do to be the freaks that we are, you know, and it really changed the mindset of a generation in a sense. And you know what? The more I watched the movie, the more brilliant I realized it was because you can watch the thing over and over and over. It gets better every time you watch it. Why was Pumping Iron? You've interviewed the guy who directed Pumping Iron, George Butler. Why do you think Pumping Iron was so successful?
A couple of reasons. First and foremost, prior to Pumping Iron, bodybuilding was about as well represented in the mainstream as it is today, which is virtually not at all. And, Arnold Schwarzenegger came along with a very gregarious personality and a very sharp wit. And he was a star begging to be discovered, basically. And, Butler told him, when Butler found out who he was, he told him that, look, I need a quantum degree of concentration from you if we're going to pull this project off. And it was really Arnold's ability to concentrate and focus that made that film a success because we learned who Arnold was. And to a lesser degree, Arnold and Franco and,
Louis.
Mike Katz. And, we got to know these guys. And, you want to contrast that to Generation Iron, where they tried to embark upon the same idea, but they didn't spend enough time with the guys, and you didn't get to know them. You got maybe Kai Green a little bit more than the other ones, but you really didn't get that deep personal idea of how these guys tick. And I remember probably one of the best and most telling aspects of Pumping Iron was when they were interviewing Arnold, and Arnold was talking about psyching out Louis and how he was going to spend one night in the hotel with him, and by the morning Louis was going to be ready to lose because he would just talk him into it, and it gave us a window into the psyche of bodybuilding, and it sort of dispelled the idea that they're just a bunch of big meatheads with big dumb bodybuilders, because nobody knew what bodybuilding was or who bodybuilders were. So now here you got this guy Arnold, who is a fascinating human being with the ability to strategize and psych out his opponent, much like any sport. So I think you got an idea of what bodybuilding was and who Arnold was, who the participants were, who Louis was, his family, and his challenges, and you really had a tremendous amount of compassion for these guys by the time they hit the stage and the movie was reaching its end. And I think it represented not only bodybuilding, but it represented the bodybuilder in a way that no one in the world could possibly have imagined they would be. And it gave them dimension, and it gave them, depth, and it gave us a really clear view as to, what makes these guys tick. And I think that was, at the time, because there wasn't ever anything prior like it, I think at the time it was very interesting. And I think that's pretty much why, as a bodybuilding primer, it was successful then, and it's just as successful today. If you don't know anything about bodybuilding, you watch Pumping Iron and you go, oh yeah, wow, this is what bodybuilding is. Because the premise pretty much has not changed.
I think the fact that Pumping Iron was so successful has made people kind of want to chase the energy of that movie. And I know that the Generation Iron team probably spent a lot of money and a lot of time putting together that Generation Iron movie. And I was at the opening of the movie, and I watched it, in the movie theater there. And while I knew all the characters and all the people in the movie, which made it nostalgic for me in the sense that I enjoyed it because I knew who I was looking at, I didn't find it was compelling. I didn't feel the emotionality. When I was watching Pumping Iron, I was rooting for Louis. That was my hero. Louis was the underdog, obviously, Lou Ferrigno. And I was rooting for Louis. You rooted for my cats, both of who didn't win, by the way. And but there was something compelling about them because Mike Katz was a regular guy. He was a school teacher. It took him 7 years to win the Mr. Connecticut show. Everyone told him he'd never be a good bodybuilder. And, here he is, vying for Mr. Universe. And then, of course, you had, Lou Ferrigno, who was hearing impaired, and, obviously he didn't go to school or anything like that. And, probably if it wasn't for bodybuilding, he would be, working at, the hardware store or something like that with his dad. And you felt for these characters. You saw where they came from. You understood that Louis was ridiculed as a kid, and everyone can relate to that. Everyone inside of us has some point in life where we were picked on or something that was, especially people who are in bodybuilding. We all have some kind of inner, I guess you could say, damage to us that we're trying to wall off with all that muscle we put on. So we could relate to it. And I felt that the Generation Iron movie just didn't capture that. So what I wanted to do today was I wanted you and I to sit down as director and I guess you could say director and producer of this hypothetical movie that we want to create. And we have to lay out what would be the plot line, number one, of the movie, who would be the stars, and what would we want to see these stars subjected to or revealed about them that would make this a compelling movie. So I'm going to let you go first. Why don't you tell me what should the plot line be?
Yeah, we should definitely take this in sections. The plot line, I think, one of the things that made Pumping Iron fantastic was the energy of the audience. If you remember those scenes where Arnold was posing, the audience was going berserk. They were going out of their minds. Right. And it drew you in. It was captivating because they look, if these people are going this crazy over this thing, it must be good, So I think first and foremost we should establish that as from back then in the 70s until now, all the way until now, 40 plus years, bodybuilding has grown exponentially and spread throughout the world and has become, a global sensation. And it's not made up of meatheads. It's made up of businessmen and the cottage industry behind it. It's a multi-billion-dollar supplement industry attached to it, along with all the other clothing, equipment, and everything else that goes with it. And off the backs of these bodybuilders has grown this tremendous industry. And I think the very first thing we would need to do in our film is to espouse the industry itself and how big it is and how pervasive it is and how widespread it is, so that you could get an idea of the importance these champions are in the grand scheme of things. Because even though Gold's Gym today has completely erased bodybuilding, you go on the Gold's Gym website, you can't even find the bodybuilder, even the icon with the bald guy, right? Bodybuilder Joe is gone. So health clubs and fitness centers have all but destroyed the hardcore gyms. So that whole hardcore element is gone. So I think you need to go back and reestablish the importance of that hardcore element, who the major players are, and how this giant, wealthy industry has, grown off the backs of these guys, and what it represents to the world, to the global economy.
Well, I think, a modernized view of Pumping Iron is a must. I think rather than try to go backwards and recapture what they did in Pumping Iron in terms of the culture at the time, we need to recapture the current culture. I think that they need to explore the social media culture, what it means to be a social media, sensation. I mean, look at Kai Green. Kai Green is a phenomenon. I mean, look at the followers he's got. He's got so many followers, and Phil Heath too, that it's got to be outside the bodybuilding realm at this point. So
Sure.
we need to explore that. I want to see where that came from. How did that take over as being more important than, a magazine cover, being more important than, going to the gym and doing photo shoots? Because no one does photo shoots anymore. It's all selfies. It's all pictures in the gym people snap with their iPhones. That's the cover, that's the cover shots now. So that's important. The new subculture of the gym has to be an underlying theme. And with that, I want to see compelling stories about our champions. I mean, Phil Heath is a 6-time Olympian champion. He stands to possibly break all the records, from Haney and Ronnie of 8 wins. I want to know what makes this guy tick. I want to know what pisses this guy off. I want to know how he feels when people think he doesn't deserve to win. I want to know what goes inside his head. I want to know where he came from. Did he come from a privileged home, or did he come from being a poor guy? We shouldn't shy away from these subjects. Likewise, even though Kai Green is not necessarily competing at the Olympia, maybe he would if they would make a movie around it. I want to see where he came from. Yeah, they took him back to the same apartment that I did that lifestyle video on him, but that wasn't real. He wasn't even living there anymore. I want to go back to where he grew up, in foster homes. I want to see the people who raised him, even if he doesn't like these people. Let's go back and find them. Dexter Jackson, I mean, he wasn't even included in a Generation 9. He's one of the most compelling characters of all. He starts as a bantamweight. People told him, you'll never be a bodybuilder. He's telling people, I'm going to be a professional bodybuilder, and people are laughing at this guy. He's the winningest bodybuilder of all time now. He's won every pro show that's ever been created. I mean, there should be there's definitely a story there. But someone's got to get to the root of these guys, and I think that these guys would make themselves available for a film of this magnitude if someone, really if a studio puts some money behind this. But that's important. That's important. Explore the latest, publications that are the most important now. Not the magazines anymore, but the online sites that publicize, bodybuilding and the subculture. Get those people like you, me, Chris Aceto, dare I say Sean Ray, Bob Chickarro, the guys that are kind of the faces of the industry now. I want to know what these guys think about these champion bodybuilders. Because that's what Pumping Iron did back in the day, So I think that people are approaching the way to showcase these documentary-type bodybuilding movies the wrong way, and they're not making them compelling. When I watch a documentary on TV, the thing that makes me want to watch it is that it's so compelling I can't stop. I'm so enamored by the characters, the subculture, whether it's about skateboarding or surfing or, the life of, I just watched something on Fists of Steel or something like that. It was the life of Roberto Duran. And Robert De Niro played his trainer, Ray Arcel. I mean, this was compelling stuff. This is what I want to see in bodybuilding. Why can't we depict bodybuilding like all the other sports are depicted?
Well, I think you also, apart from the characters, they may not be identifiable to the average Joe. You got to remember, your basic 30-something-year-old gym member today has no idea where this whole industry came from. They were born and it was here. Yeah. Whereas you and I were there at the beginning and watched it grow. So, when you go to LA Fitness or 24-hour Fitness or your other basic, health club, where did all this start? Where did this come from?
I think that's I think that's the new movie they are making, the history of the sport. I think that's what Generation Iron is doing now. That's a separate movie. I'm talking about people.
That's the history of the sport. I'm talking about the history of the where did the culture come from? Where did the idea to work out come from? Yeah. Where did this gym come from? How did this building? What's the genesis of this gym chain? Right. And because bodybuilding has basically been erased from all of it. There's gyms where your bodybuilders aren't even allowed. You go to Planet Fitness, you can't even be a bodybuilder. Yeah. So I think that it needs to be established that it's the bodybuilder who's responsible for all this, and as any compelling notion of history will dictate, you have to go back to the beginning. What are the roots? And I think once you establish the roots of both the industry and the players,
Right.
then we can move forward and discover who these people are and how they fit into that whole mix of both the industry and the sport. Because the sport and the gym business are two completely different animals now. And back then they were one and the same.
Yeah.
So the deviation created a culture that has zero idea what they're doing. They don't even know it. Where did the personal trainer come from?
Yeah.
I
guess you're right. It's a two-tiered thing. I think you're right. There probably has to be a cultural aspect to the movie to put it in the right context for people and then explore these characters. People say the guys competing today are boring. I say the questions they're being asked are boring.
Yes.
Because every person is compelling. You got to get to the root of who they are and dig it out of them. If they know they're doing something for a movie, they can't back out of it. There's no backing out. This is not like John Romano or Dave Palumbo grabbing them at a show. When you sit someone down and talk to them for hours and hours and hours, their guard goes down, and then they reveal who they truly are. But you can't be afraid to go there, and I think that's where Generation Iron failed. I think they were afraid to go to that sacred place to ask Kai how he feels about being known as the Grapefruit Man. I mean, come on. How do you not ask that question?
Right.
How do you not go there? I mean, this is something that obviously is a black eye on his career. He said it to me himself. You think he's ignorant about that? He knows that it hurt him. But you know what?
Sure.
Let's find out why he did it. Maybe.
But he's not alone. He's not alone.
No,
I think the grimy underground of our industry is really important because it shows how maligned the constituents really are, and how, like I said, it's off the backs of these bodybuilders that this industry was created. And you've got an industry that's been very stingy to the bodybuilder.
Right.
And because you would judge about how much money passes through the hands of the promoters, the supplement company owners, the equipment manufacturers, the apparel manufacturers. When you look at the billions of dollars that flow through those fingers, how much of it lands in the lap of the bodybuilder? Almost none of it. And what did they have to resort to? You got women turning, wrestling schmo tricks. You got, guys doing gay for pay. You got hustling left and right. You've got legitimate athletes reduced to the most insidious way of life because the industry has basically, abandoned them. And I think it's really important that the public know when you hit your key tag at these turnstile of LA Fitness, what does that represent in terms of the treatment of the guys who made that whole thing possible? And when you realize that these poor guys made no money, had to resort to bouncing doormen, security guards, gay for pay, private posing, wrestling, all of this grimy, schmoey shit that, to make ends meet, not to make a ton of money, to barely get by. It's disgusting in one sense. And I think when it's almost, I analogize it to, the sex trade. When you hear about, how, these wealthy, diamond merchants, are buying girls on the black market, it's how do you justify one with the other? It's almost impossible. However, it is interesting to find out what lies behind, what are the dirty little secrets? What lies behind all this? And I think you're right. They're not asking the right questions. They're not asking the compelling questions. And I think if we did do a movie like this, we would ask about, what did you used to do back when you were 19 and, you had no job and you were living in your car and you had to eat? What kind of jobs did you do? And get them to talk about it. Get them to talk about the naked posing and the gay for pay shit and the nude photography and the schmo wrestling. And I think that would be eye-opening. Not only would it be eye-opening, but I think you want to talk about compelling. that would be a tremendously compelling aspect of the guts of this animal to talk about.
Well, yeah, and I think this is something the public would want to watch because they're like, wow, I didn't know this goes on. I mean, this is TV, this is movies, this is life, this is reality, this is real, gut wrenching, like you said. I mean, oh my God, look at the sacrifices these guys are making for this, and really, it's all because we have that dream of Arnold there. Arnold set the dream, the American bodybuilding dream, I call it. You know, you can, if you're a successful bodybuilder and you win Mr. Olympia, you could be anything you want. You could be governor of California, you know. You could be a movie star. And I think everyone buys into that dream, you know, and all the bodybuilders in the back of their mind, they're thinking, I'm going to make it, you know, and only a couple of them do. And so, I mean, even you might want to in this movie, we might even want to look at the life of like Craig Titus, you know, look at some of the tragedies that didn't make it, you know.
Sally McNeil.
Yeah. Shooting Ray McNeil.
I think you also need to. I think the dirty underside of it, the dirty underbelly, as it were, is particularly compelling. Because if you look at Joe Weider, God love him. I mean, we all would be out without a job if it wasn't for Joe Weider. We owe him everything. However, if you dig into Joe Weider's past, you find out he was basically publishing gay porn, you know, alongside of his, bodybuilding magazines. And not that I mean, there were magazines with, you know, naked bodybuilders, you know, that he was, you know, promoting back at that time. And I think that's not to say that that's a bad thing. I mean, it's just a thing, but it's part of our culture.
Yeah.
And you can be afraid of it, you can ignore it, you can sweep it under the rug, but the bottom line is it happened. Right. And there's pictures of Arnold hanging out by the pool naked and, you know, with all that. But it's just what happened. It's real history.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
so
I think that the industry is predicated on the fact that, you know, this is bodybuilding magazines were Playboy for gay men, you know?
Pretty much. And there was different degrees of it. You can't blame a guy for discovering a niche, a market, and you know, exploiting it. Right. It's like saying Sports Illustrated exploits baseball. You know, it's there. There's a market for it. It's there. It's like Denise Messino and her whole thing. It's there. It exists. There's a market to service. You cannot fault somebody for taking advantage of that. And everybody screams, "Oh God, don't say that!" But it happened. It's true.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but fast forward to today. What is happening today that makes, you know, these guys tick? What are they doing today? Back then, you know, guys lived in their car. They did all kinds of crazy hustles, you know, to make a buck. What are they doing today? It's 10 times worse because everything costs 10 times more.
Right, but then again, also today, because of social media, people have followers now, and they can put YouTube videos up, and they can monetize them, and they can actually earn money for themselves, which is something that never existed before in the history of the industry. So a lot of bodybuilders do coaching. You know, maybe they pose naked on cameras, webcam. I don't know, make money. I'm sure they do that too, but they do have an ability to legitimately make money via social media. And some of the people that have the biggest social media followings are not even the best bodybuilders. So,
right.
Look at some of these guys that are just like off the charts. What's that guy, Sergi Constance? What has he got? Millions and millions of followers. The guy all over the world. He doesn't even compete in the IFBB and in any major shows. I mean, but he's one of the most well-known, you know, bodybuilding, I guess, physique stars out there. So you can make your own niche, and you don't have to be dependent on he's got 2 million followers. You don't need to be dependent on the industry itself anymore. You don't have to feel like you're a slave to it. You can kind of do your own thing nowadays and still make a living for yourself. So the opportunities are much greater. That's why I think, like you said, the underculture, the subculture of where we're at now is a very important and compelling movie in and of itself. But I think it puts in context where the people who compete today are at, and where the next generation is going to come from.
Well, and what they contribute. I mean, if you look at, you know, the spray tan girl, the hair and the makeup girl, the suit ladies, the that make the posing
The
suits.
posing coaches like Kenny Wallach, who's probably a millionaire now with all the posing he does with
Posing
people.
coaches, diet gurus, contest prep guys. These people are making more than the athletes.
Absolutely. I ran a course this past weekend in San Diego. I had 22 people there, and I had $750 a person, and I was there to teach them how to be coaches, and then they're going to take that and they're going to go get 50 to 100 clients each after taking this class, and so they're going to make a living. So we're creating a pyramid structure where people can make a living now from this industry, because it's not about the magazines anymore. There are no more magazines. They're anachronisms in today's society, and they'll be gone within a year or two, if they even last that long. So people have to make money on their own. There's no contracts being given out anymore, and people realize, hey, I'm going to do contest prep. I'm going to do posing with people. I'm going to spray tan people. I'm going to do hair and makeup. And they're filling these niches that are rapidly growing because of the fact that there's so many people competing in all these new divisions today. So it's terrific for the growth of the sport and for the ability of people to make a living doing what they love. And I think this is an important part of the culture that definitely needs to be brought out in some type of a docudrama movie,
And that's the defining difference between Pumping Iron in the 70s and what this movie would be in 2017, is that look at the industry that has grown off of these bodybuilders. That's what's the compelling aspect of it. None of this existed back then.
Right.
There were no gurus, no contest coaches, no spray tans, no suit manufacturers, no equipment companies, no belt makers, no nothing back then. And no social media.
Right.
Now you've got this giant global monster that has encapsulated everything, but the bodybuilder himself is still at the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah.
And I think that's the compelling aspect of what we would espouse in this film is that all of this evolution has occurred since 75 or 74, 75, whenever it was that Pumping Iron came out, and how big this bubble has grown, and really how incommensurate it's grown for the athlete. And you take, Jay Cutler, Phil Heath, Kai Green, these are wildly successful guys, but there's only a handful of them out of the hundreds of, if not thousands, of top-level competitors around the world that there are. And I think attention needs to be called to the fact that these guys work brutally hard, probably harder than they did back in the day, and they're just not getting their due. And I think what makes it interesting is they still do it. The passion drives them, right, to the point where they it doesn't matter. They'll still do it no matter what. It doesn't matter what they don't get. It matters what they do get, and they're just looking for that spot on the stage.
Yeah. And there's one scene we must keep in this movie, John. Otherwise, I won't do the movie with you. We need to do a Steve Blackman scene on at the docks out on Long Island in the summer, and we have to make sure we have a fan blowing so his hair is blowing in the breeze. We have to have. We want to hear the Steve Blackman story. His input into the bodybuilding industry and what his mark was that he made.
I think Steve Blackman is going to emerge as a very important character in the grand scheme of things, because if it wasn't for him, Weider would have had no competition.
Yep.
With giving out contracts back in the day.
Yeah.
And Vince McMahon came along and started the whole thing when he created another bodybuilding federation, which obviously subsequently folded. But it wasn't until Vince came along that bodybuilders were offered any kind of real money.
Yeah. True.
And then, you had the defectors, and they had to come back. But in the aftermath of that, Blackman rose up with muscular development, and he actually started paying people.
Yeah.
Unlike he's doing now. So
he's making up for it now. He's taking back the money now that he paid out.
He paid for a while. So, I think, to his credit, that's going to be an important aspect.
Yeah.
That what it took was competition to get these guys paid. Now, we've kind of merged into, it's kind of every man for himself, and the social media is the bellwether by which you establish your value. The more followers you have, the greater the value you have, and it really doesn't matter how good of a bodybuilder you are.
But John,
it matters how many followers you have.
Isn't it a terrific thing what's going on now? YouTube pays you if you have subscribers and people watching your videos. They pay you. So ostensibly, if you're willing to work and you're willing to teach people and you're willing to reveal yourself, almost like your own reality show, you can make a good living for yourself. There's guys out on the YouTube that don't even compete. Look at the guys like Boston Lloyd or Rich Piana. How many followers they got? They're making money. They're getting checks every month from YouTube. I got news for you. And this is a vehicle we never ever have seen in the history of the world, where people can sit in their freaking basement and they could make a living. Look at Louis Marco. He's probably making a very good check every month from YouTube, and the guy no one even sees him. He's like a recluse. So, and who is he? He never competed. He never did anything. He's just some schmuck who gives his opinion every day, but he does it on a regular basis, and he's got a weird accent, and so people seem to tune into him and find him amusing.
Look at C.T. Fletcher.
Yeah.
He's a guy who, was great in his day as a strongman, powerlifter. But the guy had a heart attack or heart surgery, who came back from the dead, and now he's like this social media sensation. He's got his own gym chain, and he hasn't set foot in a competitive arena in 30 years.
Hey, I'm changing our movie, okay? You've given me a better idea. I think we should track the social media phenomenon in bodybuilding, and go to all the social media, I guess unique people out there that are making the greatest living. Let's do it on the social media of bodybuilding. I think that's more compelling of a story than the Phil Heaths and Guy Greens, because everyone knows about them. I want to know about the C.T. Fletchers. I want to know about the Cali Muscles. I want to know about the Boston Lloyds and the Rich Pianas and the Louis Marcos and the Vegan Gains and all the other social media, people that are like superstars out there.
Right.
Let's find out where they came from. What makes them tick? Why did they get into it? How did they become so popular?
And contrast them in no other sport. Baseball, football, hockey, basketball. In no other sport does there exist a secondary set of personalities that make as much or more than the frontline stars of the industry.
You're right.
I mean, you take Jay Cutler, Kai Green, Phil Heath, Dexter Jackson. You take these guys, you line them up, and they're making contracts. They're making money. They got lots of followers. But then you contrast that with Boston Lloyd, Rich Piana, C.T. Fletcher, 10 other guys who are making as much or more than these guys.
Tony Huge,
that are making as much or more than these guys, and no one even has seen them, with their shirt off, let alone compete. And there's no other sport, none, zero, no other sport that has that direct a correlation with the frontline stars and the secondary, personalities. It doesn't exist anywhere else in the world.
You're right. 100%. That matter of fact, I think that I've got an advanced copy here someplace of Blackman's new roster for the 2017 season. He is signing Boston Lloyd, Rich Piana. He's dropped all the professional athletes. He will sign no professional athletes.
Eyeballs.
He should just sign all those guys and just have them be exclusive to muscledevelopment.com, and he'll have hit a home run on those guys. Except those guys will tell him to go fuck himself because he won't be able to pay them enough money. That's why.
That's what he did with Dana Lynn Bailey.
Yeah.
He hates women. He's a misogynist. He hates women. But he put Dana Lynn Bailey on the cover. I think the only other woman who ever was on the cover, I think, was either Linda Murray or Iris Kyle. There was,
Laura
by herself.
Creval. Yeah, probably Laura Creval was on the cover. I don't think Iris Kyle was ever on the cover.
By herself. Okay? So the only solo female on the cover, Dana Lynn Bailey. Why? Because she took second at the at the Olympics? No, because she's got 13 million followers is why. So here you've got failing companies who are trying to ride the coattails of social media sensations to save their businesses.
Yeah. I think
Where else does that happen?
No, it wouldn't. I think that would be a great movie. I think a documentary on the subculture of bodybuilding and how all the fans became the stars. Think about it.
Right.
It switched. It went from Arnold and Louis to now it's the fans that are the stars, and that the stars are watching the fans on YouTube.
Well, it's like if you owned a hardware store, all right, and your hardware store's going out of business, it's suffering, and you go out and you get, the guy from Counting Cars or any of these, car show guys that make their own cars and motorcycles. You put him under contract, and he's doing all your ads because he buys his nuts and bolts from you. And you're using his following to save your company.
Right.
Where else? What other industry does that happen? It just doesn't.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, you're right. I think it should be. I think it should be the advent of social media and how social media can save. Or at least bolster an industry or a segment of the industry that's literally dying. Print is dying.
Think about it. You got guys like Phil Heath probably watching these, these social media guys critiquing his physique, and then you can watch Peter McGuff doing it, and they don't even listen to him. They're like, oh, who cares about what he thinks? I want to know what fucking Boston Lloyd thinks about me. It's never something like we've never seen before. The fact that the real media like us, and we get a lot, obviously we have a lot of followers, we have a lot of hits on our videos, but we don't get the most.
No.
And you would think people would want to know what our opinion on things are, way more so than someone who has no experience whatsoever, other than the fact that they have a lot of followers on YouTube. But that's just not the case, because people want to see all the wacky zaniness, people shooting fucking insulin needles into their eyeballs, snorting insulin on camera. That's what sells. That's Hollywood, and we're just not Hollywood enough for it. And I've never seen anything like this, and who knows what it's going to even evolve into. I can't even imagine where it's going to go. And I think a documentary about this, we have to sit down and outline it. I think that we got something here unique. Let everyone else cover the Phil Heaths and Kai Greens. I want to cover the underculture.
We started all this shit.
Yeah, that's true.
Who had Mr. G chasing a chicken around the warehouse?
All right.
Who filmed the freaking eat the 15-pound steak contest?
That's right. That's right. We did.
We did all of this crazy shit years ago, and the only problem is social media wasn't as advanced as it is now.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if we did that shit today with where social media is now? We'd be, riding up there with the rest of them.
I know.
We need to go back and do that stuff again.
Yeah. Well, we got to, Johnny's going to start putting up every Thursday. He's got Throwback Thursday. So we'll be putting up videos that never made it to YouTube, because we weren't really using YouTube in the original part of the site. So maybe you should go, Johnny, find one of those funny eating, videos that we did, because they were those were classics. And I think a lot of people haven't seen them. There's a lot of stuff. We've been doing RxMuscle for 10 years almost. So there's a lot of stuff that people never saw, don't know about. And it should be interesting. All right, John and I, after we get off camera, we're going to outline this movie. Any guys out there who want to fund this movie, or people want to direct, produce, whatever, contact me at huge285@AOL.com. We're going to make this happen. You know what? Iron Rage is a show I could probably do every single day, because I'm always fucking raging about something. I'm always angry or yelling at someone on the phone. I have so many topics, I don't know what to do next. But John, I want to just thank you once again, and that's going to take us to the end of another episode of Iron Rage, the show where John Romano and I rage about what irritates us. I'm Dave Palumbo. See you next time.